Hey guys, welcome back to Chaos Zero Nightmare. In today's video, we are doing our complete Yuki guide, going through everything from her cards and playstyle, memory fragments, partners, potentials, save data builds being the epiphanies and decks you're trying to build with her when you're going through the chaos, the equipment loadouts you're aiming for, manifest egos, because there's a couple key ones in there, also her teams and other units that you want to be pairing with her. Now, I'll leave timestamps, so if you only want to go to a certain part, you can bounce around like that. And if you guys do have any feedback on the formatting of these videos, please let me know and I'll do my best to adjust for next time. Now, before we get into it, I do also have to give a massive shout out to the Chaos Zero Nightmare team for sponsoring this video. Really appreciate them looking after creators who are just making the content anyway. So massive shout out to the CZN team. And if you guys for some reason haven't started playing the game yet, or you're downloading on one of your other devices, go ahead and use the link in the description below. But let's go ahead and start off with talking about her cards and her general playstyle. Now, I'm not going to go deep into the epiphanies in this one. That will be for later when we go ahead and look at the builds. But her general playstyle revolves around this inspiration effect, which to activate it on the cards, you have to add them to your hand. Basically, any means of adding them to your hand besides drawing at the start of your turn will activate the inspiration effect. That's the general gist. So her whole playstyle revolves around basically having enough draw power or adding cards to her hand so that she can activate these effects and do some really nice AoE damage is her main focus, but she does have some decent single target damage through benefit of one of the crazy neutral cards that are in this season. So let's go through quickly and TLDR what her cards are generally around doing. So Prepare to Subdue is a card that's main purpose is to add her attack cards to her hand, which when they add it to the hand, it will allow her to activate the inspiration effect on them. Really nice. It can either amplify damage or add more cards is the basic way it goes through epiphanies. Then we have Trickery Strike is the next one I'll mention. Now, Trickery Strike has two main functions. It does have one where it's just a raw damage, but this is to activate the inspiration effect of cards in hand. So you know, the cards that you start your turn with and they don't have the inspiration effect, this will be able to activate the inspiration effect on them. However, it does have another epiphany which allows you to draw a card with inspiration effect, which is a really nice one. Once again, you can just draw it out of your deck and then it gets instantly activated and away you go like that. So that is a Trickery Strike. Then after that, we have Freezing Blade. Freezing Blade is her upgrade card. This allows her, in general, to do more passive damage, is the general way you're going to be looking at it. There is one that can also activate inspiration on one random card in hand at the start of turn, but in general, you're going to be using this as a way to get extra damage out of her while she is using attacks with inspiration. Then we have her two main damaging attacks. The first one is Iceberg Cleave. Now this one has no epiphanies, but this one is a really nice hard-hitting AoE attack, which does an additional hit when it is under inspiration. Then we have her other AoE attack, which is Flash Slash. Now, this can either epiphany into having its cost reduced. Damage will depend on how much the cost does get reduced. It also has a single target version and also like a ramping cost reduction version as well. But in general, this is going to be AoE sometime, and in one case, it is going to be single target. But that is its general purpose, is to be another AoE cleaving attack, except for the one situation. Now, quickly, her basic attacks also do get inspiration effects when you go into her potentials and unlock this potential. So they're actually not too bad, and you can also always use these as well. Rapid Slash is a 2 cost that gets extra damage, and Longsword Slash is a 1 cost that actually becomes free with the inspiration. And then the Shield is one you're going to be scrapping every time. But that is her general look at her cards and her general play style. Ego Skill will add her attack cards back to the top of the pile and do big AoE damage, which amps for the cards moved. We'll talk more about strategies on this a little bit later on. But yeah, that is an ability that you can use situationally to be very, very strong. So now let's talk about partners. I recorded this and it was a 10-minute section talking about the partners alone. I'm going to try and condense that, so we're redoing it. So we're going to quickly punch through this one. There are 4 possible partners that you can use with her. The first one being Westmacott, which is her signature. Then we have Scarlet. Then we have what is my personal favorite in Lillian. And then we also have, if you have no other options, Douglas. Now, Douglas is actually very reasonable because the way of the attack stacks is that it stacks with equipment on a separate multiplier to the memory fragment attack percent. So it actually works really damn well. Not too bad. And also on his first turn, he's going to give you a good chunk of damage amplification. So honestly, if you don't have any of the others, I have been using Douglas the whole time, and he is perfectly fine. Like I said, Lillian is my personal favorite. I think she just has great synergies in general. And she is a 4-star, meaning you're more likely to get dupes. I unfortunately have not even pulled a single one, though. It is what it is. The assigned combatants attack cards with a cost of 1 or less deal plus 10% damage. Most of the cards you're going to be using are going to be 1 cost or less. When the assigned combatant uses a skill card, plus 10% attack card damage for 1 turn stacks up to 3 times. When you got properly built decks, you're going to be punching through these many cards. Normally, at bare minimum 2, but normally if you get yourself a nice little neutral card, you can go ahead and get the 3 and get that max stacked pretty easily in a deck with teammates that have good draw engines. Then on the top of that, we've got 3 EP, 100 damage, draw 1 attack cards from the assigned combatant. It's absolutely perfect. It's everything you need. So I really like that one. Scarlet in general is the one with like sort of the highest skill cap. I think she's not as great in Chaos because you're not going to have the perfect decks every time. But in general, she wants to be only playing your cards. You can see she loses the buffs that she provides when you play a card from another character in the team. So you want to be just getting your hand full of cards for Yuki, then just chaining all of them at the end. That is the basic way, and she does have a very high damage ceiling if you play it properly. Really nice damage potential. Then we've also got the 3 EP for 250% damage, single target, which actually is a nice thing to have, a bit of extra single target on her. And then we've got 10% assigned combatants attack card damage amount for each owned buff. So if you've got her in a really high buff team, this is going to be fantastic. Once again, Scarlet for me is more of the option when you've got really well built decks that you can go in and take full advantage out of. And then the last one is Westmacott. Now, Westmacott ain't bad by any stretch of the imagination. It is the signature one, but if you're looking at signature partners, honestly not the craziest, just because the other options are so good for her already. So if you're looking for an option and you don't like any of the others, you can definitely go ahead and pull for this, but you can also save for another character that maybe has a more busted signature partner that really takes the cake, because it just happens that the other ones are actually really well catered around what Yuki wants to do, and that is everything to do with partners. Now let's talk about the memory fragments. So for me, the generic one is going to be the 2-2 split of Black Wing for the attack percent and Executioner's Tool for crit damage, and then that leaves you with the remaining 2 to be broken. This is what's enabled me to get 57% crit rate on mine using the broken set. That is definitely an option. If you have a way in your team to apply Agony, then bringing the Agony set is definitely going to be one, because you know you're going to get the extra damage percent on that. So that if that's the scenario, you maybe have an upgrade card that epiphanied into putting Agony on all enemies every turn or something like that. That could definitely be an option. Now for sets, there are a couple other options that you can look to. The first one being the Bullet of Order set. This one recently got buffed. It is a lot better. The thing with this set is it's actually pretty solid if you have decent stats on it and you're using it in preformed teams where you can sort of have the draw power to get your whole deck out and play all of your cards, because then you can take maximum benefit of it. However, I did level up an entire set of this and tried it in Chaos, and I absolutely hated it. The reason being is in Chaos, you don't really get those reliable setups every time, and you're just losing out on damage if you're not actually getting the cards cycled through, which often in Chaos, you don't end up getting them cycling through as the way you plan them to when you have properly built decks. So that is an option, but not my favorite. The other one that we do have is this one here, which is 35% critical damage of 1-cost cards. This is specifically if you're going into a entirely 1-cost build of your Yuki, and you know that's what you're going for. Once again, in Chaos, I definitely don't recommend this because you don't know where your epiphanies are going to go. Maybe you get the Flash Slash, which goes to 0 cost. Maybe you don't get one of the 1-cost ones. You know, it's just all those aspects. You got to know exactly what you're going for and what you're planning for. And so for this one, once again, I think is viable if you have a deck specifically built around it. But for Chaos, I wouldn't recommend it either. I think it's just much easier and safer to go with the 2-2-piece bonuses and a broken set. Now, if you have good sets, you can always put the HP or the defense set on to make another 2-piece set to get some extra stats into your team. But once again, the key ones are the Blackwing and the Executioner Tool. As for main stat on this one, crit chance every day of the week. Crit is very hard to come by in this game, so getting crit chance on that is going to be ideal. heal. Auto damage over here on number 5, because obviously auto damage, it's a thing. And then this one we're going to be going for the attack percent as the main stat. Those are going to be your main stats you look for. As for substats, I look for critical chance, critical damage, flat attack, then attack percent in that order. Those are my priorities on substats, and that pretty much rounds out the gear. As we look to potentials, she is going to be one, if you want to main her, basically everything is worth grabbing in my opinion. We have the basic attack cards. This is really nice at the start of Chaos, getting some extra basic attack card damage. Also, leaving her 2 basics into her kit when we talk about save data isn't a bad option because she is capped at a ceiling of how many cards she can actually play. She cannot re-add cards back to her hand the turn they were played. So by leaving some of the basics in, you actually get more damage ceiling potential out of her if you want to play it that way in your builds. So I like upgrading this one. Plus it's super cheap, so you can go ahead and take it anyway. Next up, we have this one, which increases damage, shield, and healing of common cards. There are some really strong common cards in the game, so I went ahead and upgraded this one as well. Obviously, everyone's going to unlock this one. Then we have increased damage, shielding, and healing of the unique cards. Obviously, her unique cards are where she's doing most of her damage. Upgrading this one is going to be great. Crit rate, obviously fantastic. You want that. Then crit damage will be something I will eventually completely unlock. This is the first one that I unlock because if her attack is greater than 600, a damage of flash, slash, and iceberg cleave, which are her 2 main damaging abilities, you know, getting those increased is going to be really nice. If you really want to invest heavy into her, you can also do this one, which is going to help her basic attacks even more. However, for me personally, I basically avoid these on most characters. Probably the only one I'd really dive into this as a must would be Mei Lin, just because it saves resources to go ahead and allocate to other characters that I want to build. But once again, basically every node in here is valuable enough for her. So if you are a Yuki main, you can go ahead and upgrade everything in here with some, you know, without feeling too bad about it. And they're all pretty solid. It's not like someone like Hugo where you basically want to skip all of the left-hand side ones. This one, you know, any investment is a good investment into her damage. My stopping point is fairly safely just at this level 7 because that's when you start having to use excess resources to go ahead and build it. And I think that's just a really comfortable point to leave it on these ones. And then these 2 is going to be level 4. Once again, if you want to go ahead and farm something else instead of spending days farming these bad boys, the stones, well, that's fine too. Once again, it's a game where you got to decide whether you want to go all in on one character or build a bunch. I went pretty deep into her, but you know, you can definitely go less than this if you want to. Now it's time for that section that we call Manifest Ego. Now, the one thing I want to touch on is her Manifest Ego. If you guys saw my free-to-play pulls, I managed to pull 3 copies of her in 20 pulls, so it's kind of crazy. I still have not activated them. There's one key one that you know, if you want to get to, will really help out with your quality of life, and that is her Ego 2. At the start of battle, activates inspiration of cards on of this unit drawn at the start of the turn for 2 turns. So for your first 2 turns, you don't have to worry about not getting inspiration effects when you draw them in your hand off rip. So it's a nice one. It's a nice quality of life. There is also, we do have the, if we go to save data over here, I'm not sure if I've got it on one of her ones. Yes, here it is. So we have this one here, which at the start of battle, you can discard up to 3 cards and draw equal number. What I like to do is when I'm playing her without egos is you can utilize this, whether it be on her or one of your supports, that if she starts with some of her cards in hand that want inspiration but don't have it, you can actually discard them. And if you have enough draw engine, discarding with this doesn't put them into the played pile. It puts them into the discarded pile, which is... It's a bit finicky, but essentially, if you discard them with this, you can still draw through and reshuffle them into the deck in that same first turn. So this is a really nice way to mitigate that and make it not feel necessary. But once again, the Dupe 2 is a nice little, you know, quality of life, and then everything else is basically a damage increase. So that is just the one that I wanted to note on, but you definitely don't need it. There is good ways to work around it once you have properly formed decks. The big thing about this one is it will make life a lot easier in the chaos especially. So that is that one. And that's all I'm really going to touch on the Manifest Ego. So now let's go ahead and talk about the kind of decks you want to be building with Yuki. Now, first of all, I want to talk about duping. Duping, I always like duping your Prepare to Subdue. Now, I don't have the ideal Epiphany on this one, but because I got the Divine Epiphany with AP, it makes it a really strong option. So Prepare to Subdue is normally my first option to dupe if it comes up. Then ideally you get another dupe on something like your Flash Slash or your Iceberg Cleave to give yourself more damage damaging cards that can give you a higher damage ceiling in a turn. Those are the two first dupes that I would look to. Past that, you can definitely go in for an extra dupe if you get super lucky and you manage to get 3 dupes in a run. I still have not managed to do that. It's a bit harder in this season to get 3 dupes on a character than it was in the Zero system. But that is what I am looking at over there. Once again, Prepare to Subdue and then either Flash Slash or Iceberg Cleave, if possible, is going to be my go-to. The reason we don't just keep duping a bunch of copies of Prepare to Subdue is because you can only play... It's not like Rin where you can play the cards and then add them back after you play them and play them again. With her, you can only play each attacking card once per turn, meaning we'd rather dupe an attack card so that we can get more damage out of our single turn than duping extra copies of Prepare to Subdue. But that one dupe of Prepare to Subdue and then a dupe of an attack card is going to be ideal. You can see this one only got a 130 point save, even though I had a 160 limit. Unfortunately, on the last boss, I didn't get to dupe one of her cards. Now, the next thing I want to talk about quickly before we go into specific epiphanies, because as I mentioned, these are not the perfect epiphanies, this card, this Forbidden card, Ecstasy of Violence, is absolutely cracked on her. It basically solves her single target damage issues. 150 damage 4 times. When drawing by an ability, decrease cost of this card by 1. It starts at 9. The thing with this is, and I didn't realize this when it first got released until you test it, if it is in your deck and you are drawing, it is still counting down. So by the time you draw into it and it hits your hand, maybe it's at a 5 or a 4 cost already. So it's crazy. And then after you play it, it stays at 0 and you can keep cycling it back. Then we have this amazing confiscation neutral card, draw 1. From the draw pile or discard pile, move 1 random forbidden card into hand, and then, the epiphany was gain 1 morale, which is really damn nice. But we get to just basically have a draw plus a search for free. This is a +1 in your deck if you talk in card playing terms. But yes, it's a draw, so it replaces itself, but then you also get an extra card, which is the forbidden card if it's not already in your hand. These 2 cards... Really, I struggle to build a deck without these 2 at the moment because it is just so damn strong on her. So those are the other ones that are very key. And another thing, if you do want to save extra faint memories for your save data value, you can leave in Longsword Slash and Rapid Slash. Once again, they add to the ceiling. If you're in a really draw heavy deck, you can actually end up playing every card. If you have a good draw engine plus some AP regeneration, you can actually play every one of her attack cards in a turn if it draws out properly. So having these 2 just gives her an extra damage ceiling whilst also giving you more faint memories to play with for your duping, for divine epiphanies and stuff like that. Now, just quickly, let's go ahead and talk about the actual epiphanies that I would be aiming for. In this one, Prepare to Subdue, this is my favorite. You get to draw 1, increase the damage, and then if it's under inspiration, you get to draw an extra 1. Really, really damn nice. Really for bursty first turn teams, especially if you have that dupe 2 or if you can reshuffle things around. Really fantastic. Another one that I don't mind, especially in Chaos runs, is this one here. At the start of the next turn, draw 1 card. In Chaos runs, this is actually really nice because you don't have all the synergies. This one's not already working. It doesn't require inspiration. This one having inspirations means you can draw it through the Trickery Strike that searches an inspiration card. That's what I really love about this. Also, it will activate the Freezing Blade when you use it. So that is the only version of this one which will activate the Freezing Blade. That is my favorite. This one is my second favorite. The other option is you can retain, but you're normally playing this the turn you play it. This one where you draw 2 attack cards and then decrease their damage. I wouldn't want this one personally in a final build, but it's actually not too bad for Chaos runs as well. But once again, this one is the main one that I am normally looking for. But as you saw in my build, you can get a really good Divine Epiphany where you get plus AP on this thing. Honestly, if you get any of them with plus AP, I think it's a really good option to go ahead and take. So that is that one. As we move into, I'm going to talk about Trickery Strike next because this is one that I really do like. This is the one that is my go-to. Draw 1 card that has Inspiration Effect. Really nice. Once again, because it's Inspiration Effect, not attack card, you can actually draw from this one into Prepare to Subdue, and then you can start ramping up your turn from there. You obviously don't get to choose, it's random, but it is a really nice epiphany to go ahead and get on this one. Moving on past that, the one that I actually really like in Chaos runs, once again, this is what I want to have in my end build for other content. For Chaos runs, the Retain Retrieve is absolutely fantastic because in Chaos runs, you're not guaranteed to get everything you want. You're not going to be able to shuffle through your deck as well. And so having this activate inspiration of one random card in the unit's hand, and it's got retain and retrieve, meaning if none of them need activating, you just leave this thing in your hand till the next turn until you draw a card that needs to activate the inspiration. Or if you just want a bit of extra damage, you can just pop this thing twice if you have no other options and get some damage to kill an enemy. Like, it's very versatile and absolutely fantastic in my opinion, this one, for being used in the chaos mode. Or if we get some longer term fights where you're going for like 10 turns, well, then this becomes a lot better because because you can't use the item to reshuffle at the start anymore. And so whatever you draw into, you kind of bricked with, even if you have dupe 2, because that only applies for 2 turns. So I do think this one will have more value if we get content that forces us into longer turn fights. So those are the 2 that I like ideally out of that one. And then we go into Flash Slash. Flash Slash is really nice utility. Now, there's the first 3 basically choose your damage level and your cost. The middle one is going to give you the most damage for a 2 cost. The first one is going to give you mid-range damage for a 1 cost, and the second one is going to give you the lowest damage for 0 cost. That's literally it. They're all AoE. You just choose your cost and your damage. Me personally, I never like using the 2 cost. It feels too expensive. In some decks, I'd use the 1 cost to get the more damage out of it. But in general, I actually like the 0 cost one, even though it's weak damage. When I look to doing my builds, it just makes me more AP efficient, and especially when we take into account what we're trying to do in just basically cycle through that incredibly strong neutral card. I like having the 0 cost so that I don't feel like I'm stretched on AP in my runs. But once again, it depends where you go. In Chaos runs, I actually really do like the first one to get that damage increase. Now, the Flash Slash on the right-hand side, the 3 cost, which is big damage, and then it reduces cost by 1 each time it's used. This one, I think, once again, if we have like a 10-turn fight that's AoE, I think this one could have some very big value. To drop down to 0 and just have a 0 cost big nuke along the way, I think this could be absolutely fantastic. But once again, I don't see any content where I would actually take this one at the moment, but maybe in the future there will be some. And then the Flash Slash over here, which is the retain one, is a single target version. Now, I did experiment with it. I'm not a big fan myself, but maybe there is a build where you can go full single target. But at the moment, as I mentioned, that forbidden card kind of covers the single target aspect of her, meaning you don't really need this. I'd rather just go for a free cost Flash Slash for a bit of extra damage. Also, it can proc the freezing blade. So that's just kind of the way I would look at it. But once again, they're all different options. My personal favorite is the 0 cost or the 1 cost. Moving on from that one, we have the freezing blade. Now, for this one, to me, I don't know how this one exists in such a strong state, and the other ones are all the way they are. This one gets 2 massive upgrades. It gets initiation, meaning it starts in your hand, and it also gains 0 cost. None of these other ones gain the initiation or gain the 0 cost. Yes, they gain a bit of extra damage and different effects, but in my opinion, this one is going to be the winner every day of the week. If I don't see this one, I honestly get a little bit sad because it's just such good value. Honestly, if it was initiation and 1 cost, I feel like it would be more balanced, but because it's initiation and 0 cost, it just outweighs all the others. Even though it's less damage, it's just nice to get it up for free, slap it out there, and then you've got passive damage generation. Now, once again, in longer fights, especially like, if we end up needing 10-turn single target fights, well, maybe this one becomes an option. Even though it doesn't start in hand, when using a card of this unit with an active inspiration, 130% damage to a random enemy. Now, if it's a single target boss fight, this gives you much more damage, especially over a longer fight. So even though you might not get it out first turn, if you get it out second turn and then you get much more damage over a long fight, I can definitely see something like this being more valuable. But in the current state of the game and the content we have, I prefer Freezing Blade that has the initiation 0 cost. This is my favorite one, but who knows? Maybe other content will change that over time. And that is all of the cards. Once again, as I mentioned, the 2 basic attacks can definitely stay in there to save yourself some memory. And also get you some extra damage ceiling. But this thing, get rid of it ASAP. It sucks. Don't use it. It's just a brick. It doesn't even have an inspiration effect. So that is that one. Once again, the ultimate. Now, the ultimate, when you're using this, I try and use it as a utility move when I have a draw skill in my hand, especially like a draw 2 from Veronica or something like that, and I draw into cards that don't have their inspiration. I can use this to put them back on top of the pile, then do the damage, and then just use my Veronica draw 2, and then I can draw those cards, activate the inspiration, and then go ahead and use them. That is my favorite way to use this, but you can just use it as clutch AoE in situations when you need to. The one thing is, don't use this skill, even though it gets a bit more damage, do not use this skill if you have attack cards with the inspiration active already in your hand. Don't use this before you use them. Just go ahead and dump them and then use this, because otherwise if you use this and you don't have the draw power either, then you're going to be moving them on top of the deck, doing this, ending your turn, and then you're going to be drawing them at the start of the turn and not activating inspiration. So that's the one caveat with the ultimate. But the ultimate, I use it for damage and also to get the cards onto the deck so that I can draw them out again. I really think this thing wants to have a draw 2 tied on to the very end of it, but unfortunately it doesn't. It is what it is. So now let's talk about equipment. We're going to start with weapons, then go into armor, and then go into trinkets. Now, this Chimerite as a weapon is fantastic. When drawing an ability, increase damage amount of attack cards of this unit by 35% for 1 turn. This is really nice, and it doesn't stack, so you can't really cheese this to make it completely broken, but this is still a really nice piece of equipment. However, you may want to leave it when we talk about some of the chest pieces like this one, where it can have some good utility, keeping in mind that with these like mythical pieces, you can only have 1 piece equipped per character. So it is nice, but once again, you do lose out on some of the utility that you might be able to get from the other pieces. If we look to other options, my personal favorite option, if we can find it up here, is this one. When there are 4 or more cards in hand, increase damage amount by 30%. I like this one because normally I'm playing her with a heavy draw engine, and that allows me to have a ton of cards in hand at all times. So this is my personal favorite for her for the legendary. It allows me to have that mythical slot maybe on my chest for the flex that it can bring. Another one that's really solid is this one. When drawing by an ability, increase damage amount by 20% for 1 turn, 2 times per turn. This one is really nice when drawing by an ability, so it doesn't have to be her own ability. So this one is also just incredibly safe to go ahead and use. It's not a bad option. Another one that we do have is this one here. When drawing your own attack card by an ability, so you got to be using your ability. That card is a plus 50. This is additive as opposed to multiplicative. So this one's okay, but it's not the most broken thing ever. So those are the kind of ones that I would look to in this. And normally every run, you're going to get one of those at least to go ahead and use, because the chaos is just littered with these things, because, you know, obviously it's her. She's launched during it, everything's catered towards her, and there's events everywhere to go ahead and get these. So I think that is a pretty safe option. Otherwise, there is the blue dagger, which I don't even know if it shows up in this one here, but there is the blue dagger. Nah, it's like a universal one that gives you like a percentage damage increase. So that is another option if you get absolutely desperate from the shop, but these things pop up everywhere, and they will also pop up in the shop. Moving on from that, we go to the chest piece. Now, for damage-wise, this is my favorite one. When hit, increase damage amount by 10%, can stack up to 3 times. This one's real damn nice. You know, we get some extra damage amplification. Really nice. So for damage, that is going to be a 1. But like I mentioned earlier, the final boss can sometimes drop this, which is a fantastic utility. You either, when you're playing Yuki, especially when you don't have dupes into her, this one is very fantastic to have on either her or her teammates. You want at least one of this in your builds when you go into content, because it's so good for getting rid of her cards that are kind of useless in the hand at the start of turn. If you have multiple of these, it will let you discard up to 3, draw 3 more, and then you can do it again, discard up to 3 and draw 3 more. So you can really rinse through your deck if you have multiple of these as well. So that is a really good one on top. Then as we go through the other options in terms of the trinkets, the dimensional cube is always going to be an option. This is one that I personally have not unlocked. If we go over into the chaos, into the 0 mode, I just once the season came out, I never got around to finishing it, and I'm not a big fan of the cheese. But if we go over here into the blue pot, which is this one, and we go exploration and we go equipment, at the final, actually you can even look at it over here, rewards info. At the final unlock for blue pot, when discounting a card, plus 10% damage for 1 turn. This is great when you're using things like Nia, who discard a lot. You can get ridiculous damage amp. it does require those specific teammates. Otherwise, you know, you could be using this and have 3 units using the discard at start. Maybe you could cheese around with that. But this dimensional cube is just absolutely broken because it doesn't have a stacking limit. Most things have a stacking limit. I assume they forgot to put it in on this thing. So this thing kind of breaks the game in a lot of situations when you truly cheese around what it can do. So that one is always going to be one of those options in there that can cheese with every character, as long as you're using supports that can really take advantage of that discarding type system. As we go into the rest of them, there is another one that's cater-made to her that is dropped in a variety of places, and that is going to be this one here. Plus 30% damage amount. Stress received becomes 0, 1 for each battle. So the stress is nice during the Chaos run, but the damage is what you're really looking for out of that one. There's another utility one that I really like, the pink one. This one's not too bad. Once again, I try and get the damage ones on her specifically because she is your damage. But at the start of battle, change the cost of 1 card in your hand to 0 for 1 turn. Nice little utility at the start of battle. All right, so now let's talk about teams. So firstly, I want to talk about Chaos. When you're going through Chaos, this is where I do really like pairing her with Mika. Mika is just kind of that nice unit in Chaos where she can just bring you the healing and safety and AP generation and AP efficiency when you don't know when you're going to be getting epiphanies, whether you're going to be getting good epiphanies or anything like that. So I do like Mika. Another character you can use in place of this Veronica would be something like a Khalip. Khalip and Mika just really carry, especially in like the difficulty 8 range. They won't work so well with her up into difficulty 11. That's when you need more catered teams. But Khalip and Mika is going to be a good babysitting team for Yuki. But they're not the most synergistic team, and you wouldn't be using them in like Dimensional Twilight or something like that. Other options you can take into the Chaos. Basically, there's a few other units. Now there are other units that can definitely pair with her, but the main ones I would look to be using in the Chaos would be Veronica, Mika, Ray, Nia, Cassius, and Beryl. Those are going to be her main teammates for support. Basically, so they have the card draw, but Mika's in there for a bit of extra sustain and also the AP efficiency in the Chaos. As we look to places like Basin of Hyperspace, especially over here, you can see I got Mika in here for testing, but a lot of other teams really want Mika, so you can always put Mika onto the other team and then bring Yuki into these types of things with any combination of those other units. When we look to Veronica, Nia, Cassius, and Beryl and Ray, all fine units to go ahead and do. Any two of those units, you should be pretty fine to have a really solid team. Now, there is situations in which you can bring Mika back into this mix, and that is if you've gone with more of an expensive Yuki build, meaning she's using a lot more AP. You can just kind of feel out whether you're running out of AP and then maybe you need a Mika. If not, you're good just to run pure card draw and amplification. My favorite is going to be this one here. Is the team I like to run, which is going to be the Yuki, Veronica, and Ray. I think this is a really solid team. It gives you some good damage amplification with Ray, some really good card draw with the Veronica, and then obviously we've got really good damage, searchability, and stuff like that out of the Yuki. So that is what I'm looking at. Once again, it's fairly simple. There are going to be definitely other teams that you can cook up. You know, I have a theory on a Hugo one, but it will take a very specific build. A Renoa could have a draw engine type build for her as well, but it's once again very specific. Or you could be taking something like a Magna in there to help out with shielding and stuff like that. But if you're taking Magna in, just make sure you're running some draw support because you will definitely need that in there. But that is a basic look at teams. Once again, I think the safe way to look at teams if you're just getting started with Yuki and you're looking for a team, pick either Veronica, Ray, Mika in some situations, Nia, Cassius, or Beryl, and there you go. 2 of those ones and you're good. You should be fine to go ahead and get some decent results with your Yuki.